I'm good. My name is Lungile Ndeta. I'm also a thank you. I'm also an intern at Canred. It is a pleasure to welcome you to this important dialogue. I am assuming you guys know why you are here. Can anyone tell me what is the topic for today, the theme? Or you guys are just here for vibes? All right. So we are here because of the Herald and Canred Community Dialogue under the theme Local Government Election 2026, Strengthening Democracy Through Stable and Accountable Government. A warm welcome to everyone here and also those who will be participating online on the Herald live stream and also Canred's YouTube channel. I would also like to extend my greetings to my director, Prof. Ngomezulu, and my manager, Mr. Sturman, in their absence. As we approach 2026 local government elections, this is an important time for us to reflect on the state of our local government and democracy. Local government is where democracy is experienced most directly by ordinary citizens. It is where decisions about service, infrastructure, development, and the well-being of communities have a real and immediate impact to people's daily lives. And that is why stability and accountability, it is important. Tonight's dialogue gives us an opportunity to ask questions like, how can we strengthen local government? How do we improve accountability? How can citizens participate more meaningfully in local democracy? And what can be done to build greater confidence in our local institute? We are very fortunate tonight, this evening, to have a distinguished panelist bringing different perspectives to this conversation. We look forward to hearing their insights and, importantly, to engage with them through discussion and questions from both our in-person and online audience. I encourage everyone to participate openly and respectfully. Democracy is strengthened when citizens are informed, engaged, and willing to ask difficult questions. As we begin, let us remember that elections are not simply about choosing political representatives. They are also about the kind of communities and government we want to build. The responsibility for strengthening our local democracy belongs to all of us. With that being said, I formally welcome you to tonight's dialogue. I wish us all a meaningful and constructive discussion. Thank you and welcome.
Guess who's back? Okay, so my job right now is to provide just the lay of the land, right? But before then, I like clapping. Clap if you have a shirt from a political party. Yes. Okay, clap if this was given to you while they were campaigning. Okay, so they're very stingy with shirts nowadays. So we're side-eyeing them too there. But mainly when we look at elections, most of the time when we come across anything that has to do with elections, we associate it with a bunch of people in shirts of different colors, coming to households. Others are kissing babies. Others are washing your grandmother's blankets. Others are informing your grandmother that, you know what, if you vote for us, wow, we're going to change your life. But ultimately, the main question is, do they change our lives when they are in power? Do these people that we put in power understand and acknowledge the fact that we have the power to vote them in or out of government? Now, many of the issues I mentioned, like your load shedding, your water, potholes, sewerage, garbage, all of these things are run by your local government. They are in charge of this. So, brown water in your tap is an indictment on the local government that is meant to run you. Do you know that we have one of the biggest municipalities in the country? One, not the only. And when you hear about the expenditure of this government, it starts bringing into question whether or not the people who are currently in power are able to carry the amount of responsibility that comes with the amount of money that is given to them. Now, these people are in government for about 5 years. And now we ask ourselves, have your lives changed in the past 5 years? Do you know your ward councillors? You don't know your ward councillors? Do you know what ward you're in? You know your wards? What is the ward you're sitting in now? Nyayibonag. Nyayibonag. No, but it's good that you would know your ward councillors. It's important for you to understand that if anything goes wrong, I'm going to tell you something. In Summerstrand, at some point in time, there was a gent with a name that starts with a G. Every time the electricity switched off, everybody would start calling his name. Where are you? Why is there no electricity? But sometimes we get told that these people have their hands tied because they can't make these decisions by themselves. They also have to go back and speak to their parties. They tell you about hierarchy, comrade, you know? And then you ask yourself, when you came to my house and started kissing the baby and washing Coco's blankets, you weren't telling us about hierarchy. It is only now, when we're holding you accountable, that you do that. Accountability is an important thing, and it's one of the themes here. We're strengthening democracy through stable and accountable governments. And unfortunately, we have reached a point where holding them accountable can only go so far. The only way we can do it now is to race to the ballots, to make an informed choice. But we need to know exactly what taking or making an informed choice looks like, right? So, you've all experienced, wait, how many of you have been to a protest? Clap if you've been to a protest. Okay, let's start again. Clap if you've been to a protest. Clap if you've bent the tire at a protest. Hayibo. Kenzakalani. Okay, so we can understand that some of you here, we shouldn't play with lighters or matches in your presence because you're very happy to clap about things. And mainly, I want us to look at what kind of local government we are voting for. It's not enough for us to just vote. We also need to understand how they work, what political parties are promising, who the candidates are. Clap if you know any of the mayoral candidates for this year. You know what the crazy thing is? It's the politicians in the room clapping. The regular people don't know anything. But all protocol observed. They are the ones who are clapping. So, if you don't know who your mayor is, how can you hold them accountable? If you don't know who your ward councillor is, how do you reach out to them? Clap if you actually hit a pothole on the way here. So, I'm assuming the amount of claps equates to the amount of potholes. Too many to count. In the room with you are people who are going to answer your questions, who are going to help you and inform you. But it is up to you to be as reactive as you need to be to engage with what they're saying to you. Conversations about local government across South Africa have increasingly centered on questions of service delivery, governance, political instability, and accountability. Now, in Nelson Mandela Bay Metro, residents have experienced how changes in political leadership and instability within government can affect public confidence. Did you know that we have a coalition government here in the Metro? Okay. Do you know about the fact that we, alongside Johannesburg and Cape Town, are metropolitan municipalities? No? Look at me dropping some knowledge. And I'm just a facilitator. Wow. So, In Johannesburg, they face problems with the coalition politics and changes in political leadership. I don't know if you know this, but many a time in Johannesburg, there have been different mayors. Did you know that even in this metropolitan municipality, yesterday's mayor is not today's mayor? And this then means that the public themselves don't know who to count on, who to hold responsible. They don't know if any of the things that they're crying about are heard anywhere, because now there's a different face. Now imagine if your mayor was on the face of your money. How many times would we have to change our money? We need to know who is governing. And the deeper question is also, how is governance experienced by ordinary people? How do citizens use elections to influence the direction of that governance? Did you hear about the story where, I can say his name, Panyaza Sufi was saying he showers at a hotel when there's no water in Joburg? Did you know this? You don't know this? Let me tell you. So he says, I shower in a hotel if there's no water. And you know, there were water cuts in Johannesburg. And so one of the opposition parties decided to say, no, you know what? When we shower in a pothole. And she started swimming in one to show the incompetence of the government of the time. What they fail to tell you is, these people are in a coalition government. It is no longer just on one person's head when there are failures inside your government. Now you can look at the people that you voted for and say, you are part of the coalition government. What are you doing to further my interests? Because ultimately, that's what you need to know. This is what I want. And I want it through you who I'm voting for. So if I don't get it, of course I have to ask you. And that's what accountability means. I have set the scene for you. So I ask that you allow me to introduce our speakers. Are they ready? I need a thumbs up from our speakers. Okay, so we're going to start first. All protocol observed. Councillor Noxolo Uhuru Koko is an ANC councillor in the Nelson Mandela Bay Metropolitan Municipality. With experience in municipal governance, oversight, and youth leadership, elected to council in 2021, she has served as ANC whip in the Municipal Public Accounts Committee. Public accounts, that's where the money is. And as an ANC whip for safety and security. In 2026, she took up the role of ANC whip for public health. She also served as a Salga Youth Commissioner for the Eastern Cape from 2025 to 2026. Through her work in local government, she has engaged with issues of public safety, service delivery, municipal accountability, and community development. Her experience in council leadership and youth representation provides valuable insight into the role of young people in strengthening responsive, accountable, and effective local government. Please give her a round of applause. Now, we didn't bring you one or two or even three speakers. We said 4. You know, next, Dr. Ongama Mtimka is the acting director of the Raymond Mhlaba Center for Governance and Leadership and a senior lecturer in the Department of History and Political Studies at Nelson Mandela University. His research interests include political economy, international political economy, political risk analysis, and industrial development, as well as party politics and strategy. He holds a BA with majors in journalism and politics from Rhodes University, a master's in philosophy and essay politics and political economy, and a PhD in political studies from Nelson Mandela University. Please give him a round of applause. It doesn't end there. I told you, 4. Tessa Dooms is a director at the Rivonia Circle, political think tank. Tessa recently authored a book titled Colored that explores identity politics in South Africa. Trained as a sociologist, development practitioner, and political analyst, Tessa is an activist, author, and change maker committed to the remaking of the future of South Africa. Tessa started her career in academia. She has worked in diverse sectors, including government, NGOs, and the private sector, where she did work that aligns with the objectives of various institutions and programs with developmental objectives for the advancement of Africa. She has 15 years experience as a development worker, trainer, and researcher with expertise on governance, youth development, and innovation, and has worked in over 10 African countries. In 2015, she was appointed to the National Planning Commission to advise the President on the implementation of the National Development Plan of South Africa. Tessa is a trustee of the Kagiso Trust, and she holds a Master of Arts from Wits. Please give her a round of applause. Our final speaker, Dr. Victor Shale, is the Deputy Chief Electoral Officer of Outreach at the Electoral Commission of South Africa, bringing over 2 decades of experience in electoral governance, conflict transformation, political party development, and democratic development across the African continent. Internationally recognized for his contributions to electoral policy and practice, he has worked with leading institutions including the United Nations Development Programme, the Commonwealth, the African Union Commission, and International IDEA. Dr. Shale has made significant contributions to electoral policy and practice, including serving as a lead author of the SADC Model Law on Elections and developing the African Union's Youth Participation Guide in political and electoral processes. Prior to his current position, he served as country director of the Electoral Institute of South Africa in Zimbabwe, and as general manager in the office of the CEO and the Electoral Commission of South Africa. He holds a PhD in politics from UNISA, a master's in philosophy, in conflict transformation from Nelson Mandela University. Please give him a round of applause. Now, as we give our speakers a chance to just kokumoya before it gets very serious, I am going to tell you what the format is. Each speaker gets 15 minutes to present and 2 minutes leeway should they go overboard, as is usually the case in these types of situations. After that, we will be having our Q&A where you can grill them as much as you want. But remember, house rules, we lead with respect for each other and the people that are sitting in front of us. We listen and we don't judge. But maybe we can just a little bit. And that's what I want from you today. To listen, to engage, maybe judge a little, but not too much. Respect is key. Thank you very much. I will be having our first speaker, Councillor, please take it away.
One thing about me, I'll break everything. Thank you so much. Firstly, just for information, you are currently at Ward 1 now in 2021. It's Ward 2 now. In 2021, it was Ward 1. Due to demarcation, we've now moved you to Ward 2. Yeah. So that's important information. When you do go to vote, you know which ward you belong to, and that's if you live around this vicinity, Summerstrand. Igama lam nguNoxolo Nobathembu Hurukoko. I'm a PR councillor here at Nelson Mandela Metropolitan Bay. You would have heard the presentation of who I am and what I do, but ke ndingumntu. and that is how I'd like us to interact. Ngobuntu, of course, like the facilitator said, with respect. And I will clap if I have led a doi. I will clap if I've burnt a tire. I will clap if I've led Fees Must Fall and be arrested, because all of that has happened here in this university when I was still a journalism student here. The topic is strengthening democracy through stable and accountable governance. And it's true, we form part of a coalition government here in Nelson Mandela, which is quite a very interesting concept to experience daily. But there's something deeply personal about local government. It is the spheres of government that citizens interact with directly daily, often without thinking of it as government. So when we hear the word government, we think premier, president, when government is actually your day-to-day counselor. So if you travel on a road every morning and you drink water, clean water that comes from the tap, the street lights outside your homes, the refuse collected, the businesses that opens its doors to our neighborhoods, that is government. When these things work, government can can feel distant and be invisible because you don't have to interact and ask questions. But when they fail, government becomes really something painful. As we move towards another local government election, I believe that we need to have a more honest conversation about what we actually need to ask our citizens or ask them what to vote for. Elections cannot be simply reduced to which political party will secure the most votes, which political party gives you T-shirts, or which coalition will have enough numbers to form part of the administration. At the heart of the matter is a bigger question, and that question is, what kind of local government do we want, and what kind of political leadership are we prepared to entrust that with? Our municipalities are facing enormous pressures. In many communities, residents are extremely frustrated by the state of the infrastructure. Residents are frustrated by unreliable services, unemployment, we're frustrated by crime, and we're really frustrated by the lack of response to our service delivery. At the same time, municipalities themselves are also frustrated. We're dealing with financial constraints. We're dealing with political instability. We're dealing with capacity challenges and a growing expectation from our community, of course, which is not wrong. Everyone wants a better life. We cannot pretend that these problems are just simple. I voted for you, why are you not delivering? But neither should these complexities become an excuse for us to accept dysfunctionality. I belong to a generation that is not willing to negotiate with dysfunctionality, where we say, yo, ayisifike kunje, and that is normal. I think that's something that we pride ourselves as young leaders, that it's not something that we can accept. Yes, we've inherited a democratic system that was built through immense sacrifice, but also that inherited some sort of responsibilities that make democracy meaningful in our everyday lives to the ordinary people. The fact that many of our municipalities, and the facilitators listed them, that they struggle to, or the fact that many of our municipalities continue to struggle should therefore not make us cynical about democracy. It should make us more determined to improve the quality of a democratic government. This is where the question, sorry, I was trying to time and someone is calling me because I want to stick to the time. There's something, excuse me for that. This is where the question of stability is important. There is sometimes a tendency to confuse stability with the absence of criticism or political contestation. That is not what stable government should mean. A stable government is one that should not be protected from scrutiny. Ask us questions, hold us accountable, And that, for me, is what democracy and a democratic government should allow. It is a government that has enough political institutional coherence where we're able to make decisions, implement them, and take responsibility for the very same consequences. A municipality cannot plan effectively when the political leadership is constantly changing. The facilitator was telling you that today you wake up, Mang Mang is mayor, the other day you wake up, another person is mayor. And each mayor that changes comes from a different political party with a different ideology or different plan, which simply just disrupts what was already planned for. So you can have a budget plan for 5 years and say, my priority is roads. Then you wake up the next day, another political party says, Wopa, hey tada, our priority is festivals. Then moves or changes that priority into their own, because we remain in a consistent campaign mode, but never really consider the plan that we created when we were campaigning and recruiting people to vote for us. And a municipality cannot plan effectively when its political leadership changes, and every 5-year development strategy, when every political dispute threatens to collapse its administration. It cannot build investors' confidence when businesses do not know whether municipal policies will survive the political crisis. Currently in Nelson Mandela, we have a crisis where Iron Man has decided to, take a break from us, also citing political instability, because this particular government or this particular mayor prioritizes Iron Man, gives it a certain budget, another political leader comes, changes that, and its priority becomes something else. And that is part of the reason that we could be losing some possible investment. It cannot build investors' confidence when businesses do not know whether municipal policies will survive the next political crisis. And it cannot create sustainable economic opportunities when political survival becomes more important than the long-term planning. So political instability does have a cost. When coalition governments are introduced, they're introduced as something that is not really new, but was received as new. But it's not regulated and guided to say, you are in a coalition government, these are the things that should unite you, and here's your program, stick to it. It does not actually work like that. In fact, if I may use the word, it's become some sort of syndicate that I will do this, you will do this in exchange for voting for you. So when councils are consumed with political battles, budgets are delayed, infrastructure projects are interrupted, and officials become increasingly cautious about making decisions. Procurement processes have become quite vulnerable to political interferences. While long-term development programs are abandoned, they have had enough time to produce the results. The municipality then becomes trapped in a cycle where the energy should be directed towards governing is consumed by the struggle of power as to who's in power, what do they want. But stability on its own is not enough. We should be equally uncomfortable with stable governments, or what our term of stable government is. The kind of stability we need is a stability that is accountable. A government should remain in office for an entire term and it stays there, but when it fails, what then? Stability cannot become a shield behind incompetence. Stability cannot become a shield behind corruption and poor delivery. So when we say, this municipality is stable, we read stability is because you have had your 5-year term of office. But in your 5-year term of office, nothing has come out, but we then say you are stable. I don't think that should be stability. This becomes even more important when we consider local economic development. I was in the university a couple of weeks ago speaking in another panel, and my reflections there were around local economic development and industrialization. I argued that municipalities have to become more deliberate about economic factors. We cannot continue to speak about economic transformation with local while local government remains passive observers of economic activities. Municipalities have tools at their disposal. Procurement can be used to create opportunities for local enterprises. But none of this works without a functioning institution. It is difficult to build a competitive local development plan in municipalities where budgets are poorly managed. Infrastructures is allowed to deteriorate, and administrative systems are constantly disrupted by political instability. This is why local government elections should not only be about service delivery in the narrow sense. We should also ask our candidates what kind of local economic activities do they intend to build in our municipalities. So, Dr. Ongama, when you meet or interact with our mayoral candidates, I think your questions should be less about the factional battles and how they possibly affect the leadership outcome, but more about asking the candidate itself what it plans around our municipalities. What is the plan for supporting local businesses? How will young people enter the economy? How will women-owned enterprise be supported? And you'll get a sense when you ask those questions around the plan that, hey, we have a candidate or not. A young person who wants to start a business does not experience local economic development as an abstract concept. The experience is through whether they can access a permit, whether there is affordable business plans or business space, whether procurement opportunities are genuinely accessible. And for me, this is why public administration is very, very important. You don't speak about the stable government and leave it only with political leadership. We often speak about political leadership as though it exists separately from the machinery of government. It does not. Good political intentions mean very little if there is no administration capable of its own support. And with the example of changing mayors, a changing mayor also changes a city manager who is an accounting officer for the same 5-year plan that we adopted. So a municipality also needs competent officials, sound financial systems that are able to operate, function when whoever is executive mayor. A system that can operate itself and still account. Whoever understands the difference between political oversight and administrative interference. It needs councillors who can interrogate budgets and development plans rather than simply voting along with party lines. That is one that is quite dear to me. I belong to an organization that really respects party lines. And with an attempt to curb, or rather guide, the process of a candidate selection, we've made minimum requirements. Do you know the term umziwacha? Do you know the song umziwacha? Where do you learn that song? Preschool. And that is all we ask for. Please have the minimum requirement, because the council packs are this big. You must be able to read. You get them 7 days before a 400-pager, and you must be prepared. So if you're not prepared and wait for the party line, of course yourself, you are a crisis. So when we elect councillors, we are entrusting them with decisions that can determine whether businesses can survive, infrastructure can be built, water can be brought into our municipalities. So yes, coalition's government is not inherently a threat to democracy. In fact, it is forcing political parties to engage with one another, make compromises, but also represent the people. You're giving me time. Most importantly, who understand public office and are not entitled to them. Because at the end of the day, we do not experience democracy through political speeches or council resolutions. We experience democracy through the places that we live and our experiences. It's very important to register to vote. It's very important to vote as well. And when you do vote, let me not say it, but the real test of democracy does not start and end with the vote. We're not saying doyani, be activists, but form part in public participation panels like these so that you're able to interrogate what good governance is, what accountability is, and what your responsibility is. And that, for me, is the real test of democracy. Thank you.
All right, our next speaker is Dr. Ongama Mdimka. Please give him a round of applause.
Good evening, everybody. Bodani, Medach, and what else? Dumelang. Yeah. So thank you to Conrad for the invitation to speak here, and thank you, Councillor Koko. You made me change my speech because I thought as the academic I'm going to be doing the definitions of stability and everything, but you've already done that, so I had to quickly change so that I can add value to this discussion. So maybe let me start with the broad theoretical approaches, like how does the world work? Let me start there. And to do that, I'm going to borrow from systems theory. And the basic understanding of systems theory is that there is interrelatedness of things. Things are interrelated, and the world is constituted by systems, and these systems are wholes in themselves, but they are parts in relation to bigger wholes. So every person who is here is a human, and a human consists of many systems. You've got your nervous systems, you've got your digestive system, you've got a whole lot of things that make you to be a human. And though you are complete as a human being, you are only a part in relation to a bigger whole, which is what? The family. And your family has got aunts, uncles, and zbeqengeshe. But your family, though it's a whole, it's only a part in relation to a bigger whole, which is the area, the community, okay? Then the community or the ward is a whole in itself, but it's only a part in relation to a bigger whole, which is the municipality. The municipality is a whole, but it's only a part in relation to a province, which is a part in relation to a country, which is a part in relation to the whole wide world. The reason why it's important for us to recognize that is another concept that I want to talk about, which is from people who are called chaos theorists. Chaos theorists are people who told us that it seems to be that the small actions that take place in some parts of the world, sometimes in ways that are chaotic and unexplainable, tend to have big consequences in other parts of the world. So one day, a person woke up in a city in China to go and buy meat. And as a result of that one person that woke up to go buy meat in China, you and I had to not go to work or school for a year. Ne? You're getting it? Yeah. Or, if you are the lab theorist, one person woke up and went to work in the lab and then left the door open and the virus escaped, infected the first person in Wuhan, and you and I, who had never heard about Wuhan before, ended up not going to school for an entire year. Same goes for a person sitting in Cairo, same goes for a person sitting in New York. What am I trying to say? I'm trying to say the world is a system, and the integratedness of the system makes it impossible to not acknowledge what amaXhosa said. Isizwe sifa, yeah, isizwe sifa ngomuntu omnye. That's what amaXhosa say. So I've explained the integratedness of the world, how small things sometimes have got big consequences, and then to bring it home, even our forefathers knew that an individual may be acting on their own volition, but their actions can cause an entire nation to perish. So if that's the case, then what is wrong with our municipalities? The government, the system that we use at local government is one in which there are three components that make it up. It's the municipal council, Ibunga. It's the administration, the people whom we employ, the engineers and everybody else who works there, and then the community. Those three constitute the municipality. The community, the municipal council, as well as the administration. So let me spend the remaining, I think about 9 minutes, talking about what I think is wrong. Okay, I'm standing on not the protocol, but the definitions of stability that Councillor Koko shared with us. So let that satisfy us. So what I think is wrong are, first of all, political parties that are organized as vehicles of extraction rather than vehicles of service. So people sometimes participate in political parties no longer because of the grand ideals of Sizolilwela Izwela. That's no longer the thing. It's a source of employment, which is fine. The scariest for me is it being a source of control over who gets employed, who gets business. That's a big issue. Okay. Now, political parties serve a purpose in a democracy because, quite frankly, the 2 million people, the just under 2 million people in this city, would not be able to govern the same way that the ancient city-states were governed. I mean, we couldn't agree here, if we wanted to agree on some things. It would be difficult. So what purpose do political parties serve? They help aggregate the interests in the community. So they help make sure that at any given time inside Ibunga, you've got the aggregated preference of the people of the city. But the challenge is that representatives tend to use the positions that they are given for their own gain once they are in power. That's not unique to South Africa. That is a phenomenon around the world. That's why in the US, for example, we talk about vote buying of congressmen and women. So we, for example, think that the problem is with the fact that we're using a party system rather than a direct election. So at a municipal level, actually, it's hybrid because our representatives we vote for directly at the level of the ward. But even in systems where you can vote for the person directly who's going to represent you, say, for example, vote for the mayor directly, the problem starts at the level of government where representation is used not for the purpose of what people campaigned for when they were kissing babies, but what the people who pay cause them to do. So we have a human problem of greed. Now, it's even worse for me with our parties that sometimes they allow themselves to be vehicles of izigila mikuba, people who don't mean well, to organize themselves. They're not even democracies sometimes. They are elite collusion that allows people who are not, who should not be elected to assume office and then do the bidding of the ones who help them. We don't have time, so let me move. The other problem that we have is that, so the problem with this political parties as platforms of extraction is that then in the municipal council and the cause of instability, people cannot make commitments that last long that are about principle, because it's a balance of deals rather than a balance of what is it that we agree as the common vision of our city that we want. Because there could be stability, by the way, that is achieved not by the permanence of the ones who are elected to be in office for 5 years, but by the idea that regardless of who comes in, where the grand ideas that bind us are going to continue. Some people talk about, for example, the system in the US, that it doesn't matter whether you have Democrats or you've got Republicans. Oksalayo, American interests are pursued by whoever, and the policies are similar in relation to the crisis in the Middle East or elsewhere. So we don't have something for us that is an overarching ideal that makes us to say we're committing to that thing. And I think it's a value of sacrifice that's no longer there. Your time is flying, so let's look at the administrators, and I think this is something that Uceba started on. Administrators who leverage their positions for self-gain. It's true that much of the corruption that takes place is among administrators. The administrators are the engineers and other people that are employed, not elected. Sometimes these people, because they control the purse, they are more in control of the purse than the councillors. Sometimes they act in bad faith and it results in them corrupting politicians, or sometimes being corrupted by politicians. And then lastly, communities who do not play their part. And I suspect that's going to be the last point I'm landing on. Guys, there was a time that this municipality was really trying. When I was working for the municipality, we were either number 2 or number 3 in the cleanest city. Okay? Then our municipality, I remember Amelia Bachner and Zolile Siswana, among others, raised money in order to build multi-purpose centers across the city. Woma, I think there was one in Karieja somewhere, there was one in Ward 30, there was one in Wells Estate. I don't want to lie to you. I was heartbroken. My heart was seer. When I saw how dilapidated the NU30 community hall, it was as though Onomanglezane had stung it. I don't know what Onomanglezane are. It was as though it like some bugs came, thank you, and destroyed it. Who did that? That's not that I doubt it's the word councillor. It's us, the community. You go to Makana, you go to Kocha, facilities that were built with hundreds of millions are looted. I mean, we can't have a municipality that works when we have communities that don't work. So in the stability definition that the councillor gave, we must also look at social stability and be concerned about how, that is not working. Now, social stability is an issue of how disciplined we are with our romantic relationships sometimes. Because you hurt children here, and these children grow up to become ill-disciplined and rob people because they believe they must now do things in order to help the family to survive because of the burden of a father who was ill-disciplined as far as their sexual conduct is concerned. Excuse me for putting it crudely that way. And so system, I've started with system, I'm going back to system to say, we need to ensure that we police one another. When we litter and we illegally dump, we're exposing the whole community to methane gas. Children who are playing in the streets exposed to methane gas because of refuse that's there. So Haile Selassie once said, throughout history, it has been the inaction of those who should have acted, the indifference of those who should have known better, and the silence of the voice of justice when it mattered most that made it possible for evil to triumph. So, thank you.
All right. Up next is our third speaker, Ms. Tessa Dooms. Please give her a round of applause.
I'm too short for this, so I'm going to wait. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to be as prudent as I can with time. So I'm going to stick to the convention of your clapping. There's going to be a lot of clapping during my thing, and not because I'm going to say something profound. But clap if you have registered to vote in the 2026 election. Clap if you've decided to vote. Clap if you've decided who you're voting for. All right, that's a lot of people. Good. Clap if you have organized and mobilized other people to vote in this election. All right, great. So for the other half of the room that has not done that yet, my talk is for you. Only for you. The rest of you can go. But I want to start off by just imploring all of us to think about the 4th of November election as mission critical. The local government elections are a life and death election. They are a matter of life and death. Now, who you elect into government is always, to some extent, a matter of life and death. Ungama reminded us of that terrifying time in our lives when we weren't allowed to leave our houses. And it was during COVID that this thought that who you vote for could decide at any point whether you live or die. Who you vote for could decide whether you live or die. That's the difference. But local government, it's even more particular because you're voting for life or death type of things. You're voting for water, you're voting for sanitation, you're voting for roads, you're voting for housing, you're voting for basic human rights. You're not voting for basic services. You're voting for basic human rights. Now, I want you to think about who you are willing to entrust with your life when you decide who you're going to vote for. In South Africa, it's become a convention for us to, when we protest, and the majority of protests in South Africa are service delivery protests. Do not let March and March fool you. The biggest protest issue in this country is not illegal immigration. It's water, it's electricity. In 2025, we had on average 23 protests a day in South Africa. On average, 23 protests a day in this country last year. We are all suffering under the weight of services that are failing, infrastructure that is failing, health that is failing, all sorts of things that is failing. So our biggest issues in this country are issues of life and death, and all of us are experiencing it. And so think about the 4th of November as choosing the person who's going to determine whether or not you live or die. Does that up the stakes a little bit? The second thing I want you to think about as we talk about this election is ask yourself what's on the ballot for you. So on all of the issues that are out there, ask what is on the ballot for you. What is the thing that the councillors that you're going to be voting for and the people who we're going to be putting into council to make as mayors, executives, what are the things that they have to prioritize in order to get your vote? What are the ways in which they have to do that? That is not something that the political parties should answer. So in KZN, there is a activist group that is working on getting communities to come up with their own local government manifestos. So they're asking every community to come up with their local government manifesto for their ward, for their community. And communities are taking this up. Why is that important? Because the issues that matter in an election are not about who is voted for, but who votes. Elections are about voters, not about candidates. You vote, so the voter matters. The candidate is a secondary part of the story. What we do is we wait for the parties to tell us what should be important. Everybody's like, when are the manifestos of the different parties dropping? I don't care. I care whether or not the voters know what they want. I care whether or not voters are setting the agenda for this election. I care whether or not voters are saying what matters to them or not. Because that should be what sets the tone for an election. What the electorate needs, not what the parties need. And I can tell you for free, having followed elections now for a good 2 decades in this country, there is no manifesto from a party that you haven't seen before, okay? They're going to cut and paste, literally cut and paste from 2021. It's going to just be different English. But the truth is that it is voters who have to say, these are our priorities, these are our demands, these are the things that we want. If anything, we should treat elections the way we do treat protests. You don't go to a protest without a memorandum of demands. Do not go to a voting booth without a memorandum of demands. Decide what's on the ballot for you, and then tell the politicians what they need to do in order to get your vote. The next thing I want us to just talk about is the question very quickly of who's on the ballot. So we've just spoken about what's on the ballot and that we need to determine that. And now I want us to talk about who's on the ballot. So somebody asked you earlier, the facilitator asked you earlier, how many of you know the mayoral candidates? So I'm about to burst your bubble. We don't vote for mayors in South Africa. Not a single person in this room will be voting for a mayor unless they are elected as a councillor. So I know at least 2 people who are in this room. I won't out the second one, because Councillor Koko is the first one. There's only 2 people in this room I know for sure have actually ever voted for a mayor in their lives. Cast a ballot for a mayor. Because the way our electoral system works is we do not vote for presidents, we do not vote for ministers, we do not vote for premiers, we do not vote for mayors. We vote for MPs. How many of you actually, so besides people who are ministers or leaders of parties, how many of you could name 10 other members of parliament? Clap if you could name 10 members of parliament who aren't ministers or leaders of a political party. Yo, the clap's diminished. Guys, every single member of parliament that is in parliament right now, tomorrow morning could be elected president of the country. Any one of those 400 people are eligible to be president if voted for by the 400 people who are in parliament. That's how our system works. We vote for parties, parties deploy MPs, they give us the list, by the way. They tell us who's on their list. They deploy those people, and any one of those 400 people could be president. The same is true for mayors. Any one of the councillors elected, either as PR councillors or as ward councillors, could become the mayor of your municipality or metro. Now, I want you to think about your ward councillor. Would you have your ward councillor as your mayor tomorrow? How many people in this room would be confident that your ward councillor could be mayor tomorrow? Why on earth are we playing Russian roulette with our lives, with the kinds of people who could have the power to determine whether we have water, electricity, and basic human rights? We do not elect mayors. And that means that the quality of every single councillor matters on the 4th of November. So you want to decide which party to vote for. Tell them to convince you of every councillor who is on their candidate list. Every single one. You want to know where they studied, what they know, what they don't know. If you were watching the Mandela Commission today, be scared, guys. Be very afraid. Padil Adams could be your president tomorrow. That is what our electoral system is set up to do. And our responsibility is to not vote for vibes, but to vote for the people who we think we can trust our lives to. So we have a responsibility. The next thing I want to cover is the question about what our responsibility is, and why it is that voters are the most important part of local government elections on the 4th of November. So one of my philosophies in life is that voting is a group sport, and that we have fallen into a trap that says voting is an individual activity. Because you go to the booth by yourself, your vote is your secret. That is a lie that politicians tell you because it's convenient for them. Let me tell you why it's a lie. Because politicians do not treat voting like it is an individual activity. They very much treat elections like it is a group sport. The point is they're the only one that has a team. You don't have a team. They have a team, they assemble their team, they have their group, they have their supporters, and you, the voter, is just an individual spectator on the stands. You and the politician, on the 4th of November, we are all equal before the law that day. Nobody is bandman. Everybody is a citizen and a voter that day. So if they get to have a group, why don't you have a group? So let me give you a stat. I'm from the city of Joburg, so I know the stat better than I do here in Rebecca. I can't say it. I knew I was going to struggle. But at least I tried. I didn't just say PE for vibes. So here's a stat for you. Let me give you two stats. One is in South Africa, there are 41 million people who are over the age of 18, which means they could vote. In 2021, 12 million people voted. That's 30% of the people who are eligible. There are fewer people voting than there are people who could vote and completely change everything. Think about it. It's almost twice as many people as the people who voted who haven't voted, which means even the biggest party could be outvoted by the people who just stayed at home. You think that you are harming politicians by not participating in voting. Let me tell you, you are not, you are harming yourself. Politicians benefit when people don't vote, because there are fewer people that they have to convince, and the pie is smaller, so their chances at getting higher percentage is bigger, right? So I want you to think about that as I give you two other stats. In the city of Joburg, there are 23 million people who are, 2.3 million people in the city of Joburg who are registered to vote. In the same city, there are 2.4 million young people. There are 2.3 million people registered to vote in Joburg, but there are 2.4 million young people in Joburg. If all the young people registered and voted for a cat, the cat would win. All these political parties would be on their asses. Sorry for the word asses. Helen Ziller has been walking around saying that she needs 490,000 votes to win, because she has determined that by doing calculations about who won't show up, how many votes she needs before we even have the election. The election will not be determined by parties, by analysts, even by who's registered. It will be determined by who shows up. Now, here's the last thing I'm going to say to you, the last stat. Every person who shows up matters. Every vote in our system matters. In our system, not showing up benefits the politicians. So, if 5 people show up to vote, firstly, in South African law, there's no minimum number of people who have to show up for the vote to be legitimate. So literally 5 people could show up, and it would still be an election. Those people would decide for all of us. But if 5 people show up, and 3 of them vote for the Green Party, and 2 of them vote for the Blue Party, the Green Party would get 60%. If 10 people show up, and 3 of them vote for the Green Party gets 30%. When you show up, politicians have to work harder. And so I want to say to all of us, find your team of voters, convince people to vote, and determine what matters for you in this election. Do not vote for people on vibes. Vote for people who can deliver life or death, because that's what this election is about.
Our final speaker is Dr. Shale. Please give him a round of applause.
The advantage of speaking last is that you can safely say all of the above. You do the sweeping. I really don't need to detain you here any longer. My fellow panelists have ably traversed the topic for this evening, which is about strengthening democracy through accountable governments. I'm going to say just very few things, just to underscore what they have said. As was mentioned, I serve at the Electoral Commission of South Africa, and therefore, the other good advantage, and it was very strategic of you to put me last, is that the colleagues here have the freedom to say all the good things they have said. I have to be careful because I'm a referee of the process they are talking about. So it comes with responsibilities. This session is on Facebook Live. Every word I say here can be used against me from this evening. So I have to be careful as I speak. That's why I'm sweeping. Touching on just 3 or 4 points. The first and foremost, to underscore what has been said by my colleagues, is really the reality that elections are not an end in and of themselves. Elections are a means to an end. From speaker one to the last, they are talking about the value addition of elections in pursuit of economic, socio-economic dividends. Elections are a process, and therefore we at the Electoral Commission of South Africa midwife the process of getting leadership or individuals into positions of leadership. We are charged with working through the system that converts the votes that the colleagues are talking about into seats, which professors like Dr. Mtimka will tell you is called an electoral system. So when they start saying electoral system, don't be confused. He's merely talking about an art of converting votes into seats, right? So elections are a means to an end. Therefore, coming to a very strong point made by my sister Tessa, is that therefore not voting is not an option. Because this is about livelihoods. She said it's a life and death situation. It is about human rights. It is about bread and butter. And therefore, not showing up to vote is not an option, and it should never be an option. In my many professional years, I've had the opportunity to traverse the continent of Africa. There's not a single country I have not been to. And I've also had the opportunity to do some work in the most dangerous of the African countries. And I always say to people when we talk in platforms like this to say, sometimes maybe the best teacher. We were clapping for potholes and things. They are bad, but that's not the full picture. Think about potholes in the context of Africa. Some years ago when I started working in Chad, there were no more than 100 kilometers of tarred roads. Yet at that time already, Chad was the biggest troops contributing country in the Sahel. And really, the guys who were keeping the Sahel region intact in terms of the military operations. So they were spending a lot of money on weapons and fighting. In 2005, I had an opportunity to work in the DRC in a province called Equator. Who knows Mobutu Sese Seko? Yes. In a region where he came from, he was one of the wealthiest men in the world. It took me 2 weeks to get a vehicle to use to go around in that province because there are no vehicles. One of the poorest regions in the Congo. war-ridden, the best mode of transport that is readily available to you is a bicycle. Those are the commuter taxis, bicycles with a carrier and you. So I'm saying sometimes when we think things are so bad, we need to look beyond our borders and then begin to realize what we have and why we must treasure it, and therefore why then the colleagues are saying we must then make sure we vote, because elections are not about the politicians, they are about the country. There has to be a country first before we think of the government. And so it's very important to understand that our primary duty, Dr. Mtinga was making an example of America, which is not a very good example anymore, but it is still America. So there has to be a country first. Every time you wake up, you must remember your duty is to preserve South Africa. And therefore you have the responsibility to have a country. Otherwise, Luena, you may find yourself doing or being on the receiving end of Mabahambe somewhere. It's not by choice that those people are there. It's because of what is not present in their countries. They can't even vote in some cases, in some countries. So, talking about elections, we really need to start there, to say this is not an event and it's not an end. It is merely a step in South Africa's democratic project. And it is precisely for those reasons, the value of elections in democracy, that the country invests so much in terms of resources. I don't know if you are aware, but elections are the biggest logistical operation in South Africa outside of a war period. It's a massive operation. We have over 23,000 service centers called voting stations, 23,696 to be precise. During the voter registration weekends, we had 48,000 staff working at, at those centers. On the 4th of November, we will have over 200,000 people working across South Africa between 7 and 9 o'clock at night. I'm giving you this to show you the magnitude of the investment. And then, you have to also put this into perspective. There are how many wards? Anybody? Come again? No, not in the Eastern Cape. In South Africa. 4,000, about 4,500, right? So, I'm talking about the magnitude of the operation. What this means in practical terms is that myself and my poor colleague Julie over here have the responsibility to run 4,500 elections within those hours. So when we are talking about local government elections, it's not one election. It is 4,500 unique elections from 7 to 9. Because every ward is different from the next. And it's worse because elections are also perceived by some of the councillors' comrades as a job opportunity. Not much about duty to serve, but it's really an avenue for wealth accumulation. And therefore, the number of candidates keeps increasing. It's astronomical. In 2021 local elections, we had just around 10,500 seats, the whole republic, right? We are saying we have over 4,500 unique elections, but the seats collectively at the different municipal types amounting to about 10,500. Guess how many candidates we had? 95,000. So we were administering a process of 95,000 people competing for 10,000 seats. Our projections this time are that we're gonna hit the 105,000 candidate mark. So it's almost like I studied here, as was mentioned. I did my master's here in the early 2000s. If you take the main auditorium, main campus, I'm sure it may feel just about, I don't know, 10 or even... Just under 500. Or 600 something. Yeah. Okay, so take any one of the sports arenas here which can maybe fit about 10,000 people. And then compare that with the maximum capacity, of the FNB Stadium. So the people who are going to come out of these elections, Tessa, what did you say these elections are? By the way, I wanted to use your words to demonstrate. You mentioned, you said something about this being a life and death. Even for candidates, it's a life and death. That's why, unfortunately, we are already beginning to have fatalities. Somebody wins at the primaries and then their comrades go at night, they eliminate them. It's very unfortunate. So you're gonna have people who can fill up the soccer city stadium, meaning almost the entire population of the Republic of Seychelles, who are going to lose in these elections because there's only 10,000. The number of seats hasn't increased, it's still about 10,500. So next time when you start hearing them complaining, you need to understand that context, that the volume of the losers is going to be more than those who actually make it through. But again, it's because everybody wants to be a leader now, want to be a councillor now, want to be a president now. People don't understand that this is a democratic project. We have our entire lifetime to work on it, and you will always get an opportunity next time. So there's no need to hurt the next person. And we need to dedicate our time and the privilege to serve, to improve and deliver on the livelihoods of our citizens. I thought I needed to really just by way of sweeping underscore the important point that the colleagues made about elections being a means to an end, about the value of showing up. I like that statement that elections are not about candidates. They're about South Africans, they're about the future, they're about your scholarships, if it is at the national, provincial sphere, but here it's about water, it is about your shelter, it is about the roads. And we are privileged, even as election managers, to then drive that process that yields the kind of leadership that you'll be looking for. And I'm excited to see that there's so many people who said they are registered. Keep it that way. Let's not only register, let's show up on the 4th of November, because it is a national duty to do so. I thank you, Chair.
Okay, so we are at the point in the evening where we are going to open up for a Q&A. Because of the fact that I may have yapped a little bit overboard, I am going to open up the floor to the audience because your voices matter. I will also be engaging with our panelists, but I figure that you are our priority. You are the community that we are in this dialogue with. We have roaming mics on the sides and mics for our speakers. So if you have a question, please raise your hand. We have 4, 5, 6, wow. Okay, so we have 6 people. Let's see, okay, this is how we're going to do it. You will be first, you will be second, we will have a third. That's the first round. Where are my other 3? You will be first, you will be second, and you will be third. Okay.
Oh, thank you, and good evening, everyone in the house. I have a question. I have a question in the. I must make this disclaimer for a question in the comment, but I'll be brief on the comment part.
Okay.
My question is for Tessa. Let's say we disregard March and March and all the activism that took place. But how do we justify the fact that the country is not aware of how many people that are inside? Documented and undocumented foreigners. And you'd have a lived experience if you go to public hospitals and find that you're number 31 in the queue as a South African, and all those that are in front of you, chances are undocumented foreigners. You have a lived experience where we spend taxpayers' money in prison, whereas a third of those people arrested there are undocumented foreigners. If you don't know how many people that are inside the house, you'll have an inability to budget for a progressive development stage. That's that. I think Tessa must be able to do this. But a quick one, there's a coherent view, and I'm happy because this was my morning Facebook post, by the way, on the caliber of the candidacy that these elections must be able to produce. But if we're late for that discussion, I think IEC must lead a conversation on the bare minimum. I'm happy that Councillor Koko is raising the issue that her organization has Umziwacha metric as a bare minimum, because I think by the time I was in metric and I did commerce subject, accounting and economics, I should be able then to analyze financial statements. I should be able to understand the difference between micro and macroeconomics. I'm raising the issue of the bare minimum as an academic record, because if you use the metro, that's the national minimum metro as the benchmark for the discussion, the metro is a 21.6 billion GDP contributor. The metro is an international city. The metro has sister cities in the Scandinavians. The metro has sister cities in China, Fuzhou, and in the other international countries. The metro receive foreign direct investment in the auto sector. By Stellantis, BYD, they still wants to come and invest. So you need a prudent councillor that can be able to have a comprehension at that level. A councillor that doesn't fear the directors in administration because of their academic records, because of their loud and they use big English. You can't have a councillor that is Bongani Mobusela with a, oh.
You have 30 seconds.
30 seconds, yeah. You can't have a councillor that is Bongani Mobusela from Motherwell with grade 5 that doesn't understand is and was, what does is and was mean in the sentence. The world, as I learned, the world has gradually stopped discussing artificial intelligence, but is moving towards super intentional intelligence. So as the world gravitated towards, we have backwardness in our deployed councillors that can be able to deliver the task. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Elijah Nyati, and my leader here has partially captured me, but on the point he's making with regards to the lack of competence with our leaders, I'd like to touch on the skills gap. So I think one of the panelists mentioned something along the lines of skills gap, and I would argue that that's partly informed by cadre deployment. So So there's a findings by the Eastern Cape Provincial Government on COGDA that says that on the 39 municipalities in the Eastern Cape, only 8 achieved a clean audit. So that would tell you that we have an issue of cadre deployment, of which obviously now leads to skills gap. So I would stress to the audience that when you go to vote, when you go to the electoral booth, you're not voting for someone who's very radical, you're not voting for someone who's very charismatic in their nature, but you're voting for someone, as the brother said, who's went to school, who knows what needs to be done in the municipality, and we need to do away with who's very radical in the community and do away with who is most competent. So you should know whoever is going to be contesting for the elections, and you should know their academic background as well. So those are the things that the audience must go and question in their various municipalities. One last question, and it's directed to to Dr. Shale. With regards to, I would like to find out on what informs the electoral calendar of the local government elections. An often overlooked issue with the calendar of the elections is that it often overlooks the youth participation. So most of the people, or most of the youth in which she mentioned, are in university by the time of elections.
Thank you so much, my brother.
Can I just finish, please?
Go ahead.
Yes. So most of the youth are in university and TVET colleges, and are unable to vote in their very communities where they come from. So I would like to find out who determines the political future of our rural villages, our townships. So the question mainly is that what determines the electoral calendar of our local government elections, because it often overlooks the youth participation, because then they will be in different geographical areas.
So deep,
thank you so much.
Thank you. And our final question.
Thank you very much, Program Director. My name is Luzuko. Peter is my surname.
Okay.
I'm just a mere boy from Phil Plus. Chair, I have a question for Ongama, and in line with the question that was raised, or the point that was raised by Dr. Shale around local government. Ongama said what makes up local government is council, administration, and the people. Dr. Shale says, elections are not an end in and of themselves. Elections are means to an end, which is, I agree with that. But we have a challenge here of, Comrade Tessa, not just voter apathy, but we also have a challenge of citizens not being active. So, in agreeing with the point that says elections are not an end in and of themselves, after voting for a councillor, you must know that there are public participation meetings that would have been held by the municipality through IDPs and your budget participation programs. IDP is important because it is the one that makes up a budget. For us to have a development in the community, you must have tabled your submissions in an IDP session, failing which you are not going to witness an IDP session. But what is happening, our young people, our people do not attend these public participation meetings. They don't attend these IDP sessions. And still we are expecting miracles that there will be development in our communities. Even those that attend, they use that platform, they misuse it. They use it to insult or raise their complaints with the ward council, despite being told that it's a platform for you to table your issues so that we can make them, we'll put them in budget. One last point for Tessa, she's from Joburg, we cannot ask her. There is a causal link between voter apathy and there's a causal link between voter apathy and what you see. Okay, the people, when we go to them, what you are talking about, all of you, is procedural democracy. and nothing about substantive democracy.
As you land.
Oh, I'm going to say point.
As you land,
They spoke
yes.
for 45 minutes.
We're coming down.
That's
Yeah,
what I said.
turbulence.
Yes. There is a causal link between substantive democracy and procedural democracy. You guys spoke about procedural democracy. To some degree, I would say you are being harsh on citizens. So you can't blame someone that says, I've been voting since 1994, but still I sleep with an empty stomach every day. Which is why I want to force you to speak about what's the role of the private sector in terms of addressing inequality, in terms of addressing unemployment, because the state on its own, it will never be able to resolve the question of unemployment. So that is why I'm trying to lobby you to speak about substantive democracy. Thank you very much.
The blame. Thank you. All right. Our speakers each have 2 minutes in order for us to be able to have another round. You can begin. Whoever wants to take it first. Do you want to start, Ms. Dooms?
I'll try and do just the two. So firstly, on the question about immigration. So I was very clear that immigration is not the biggest issue. And I think that what has happened is we've lumped every issue and subsumed it almost under the immigration issue. So that was my point. Not that there isn't an issue, but that to overplay it as if it's the biggest issue, I think that that's incorrect, right? Hey? No, I didn't say it's not much of an issue. I just said that it is an issue, it's just not the biggest issue. And I think that that's been one of the causes of how people have been viewing it. But here's to the other point that you're making. We've got a home affairs problem in general in this country. But we've also got a governance problem in general in the country, right? So if you talk about services or something like healthcare, there are a number of things that are affecting your wait time in that queue. And what we were learning very quickly is that it's not just the number of people who are migrants in that queue or undocumented migrants in that queue. It's the fact that we don't have doctors and nurses. We've got a number of frozen posts across the healthcare system, posts that are unfilled. We've got an issue when it comes to the supply of medicine across the healthcare system. So we've got so many issues that are plaguing our governance. And then you add on top of that an immigration system that is absolutely broken. The immigration system is broken. There's no doubt about that. To the point that at least 4 million South Africans don't have IDs. At least 4 million South Africans don't have IDs. And that's, again, at least because we don't even have a proper number for that. And so you're right, we do have to have an immigration system that works, not only so that we can count how many people, so that we can make sure that the budgets match, but just for the idea of having a process that gives you a controlled sense of who's in the country and how that is managed. The final thing I'll say about it, and I think that for me this is also a sore point about this, is that when it comes to the question of who belongs and who doesn't belong, all of that, we are ultimately responsible for immigration, not the migrant. The migrant is not the person who is responsible for a broken migration system. And so if we're going to do something about immigration, we need to shoot up at the people who have broken the system, rather than shooting down at the people who are also victims of the system in various ways. Because just trying to say migrants must go, I tell you they will come back.
Unfortunately.
Because if your system is broken, it's broken.
It's time. Unless one of your colleagues is willing to give up 2 minutes.
Okay.
It's on me.
If I may, I think that if you look at who's the most engaged grouping or nation in the world on social media, South Africans rank up there. And we see that, with sport and everything. So you're quite right that people are not leveraging public participation platforms as much as they should when Councillor Pitt but maybe time has come for us to diversify ways in which we communicate with the public. I know some of these things need a community hall where you can mediate choices, but I think that we need to broaden ways to participate. That's as much as what came. Oh, on the skills issue, we are here as tertiary institutions, and we are ready to train people, you know. One of the people who are responsible for this thing of putting people who are not qualified into positions said to me when I said to them, we are here, we are ready to train. He says to me, do you think these people can be trained? And I thought, wow, we are in a system where people are willfully destructive and they know that they are bringing people. And his answer was, no, these people give me numbers. So maybe we need to reform the ways in which political party offices are attained. Because if somebody gives you numbers, then you trade with public office as a result of that. And you know that this is not a person who's even good enough to be trainable. So yeah, we have a deep crisis there. Thank you.
All right. It's true, 27% of councillors in the country do not have the basic matric. This is the 27% that is overseeing about 500 billion budget of our country. Now, for me, it also is linked with the issue of participation. Mr. Mabusela is saying, can't IEC help regulate a criteria to qualify? Even if we were to start that discussion, in order for it to be policy and law, we would have to have your contributions. That means you guys don't even participate in surveys. We send you links of policy position changes. You do not participate. And those that do, in majority, I like the presentation that Tessa was making around 5 people and only 3 going to vote, what then that means. So you still have a problem with participation. You sit here in the university. There is no way some parties are leading here if you guys were participating in voting. We've changed when we were leading student leaders. We changed from the in contact to online. You don't participate in online. So I'm not sure if we should vote through TikToks to ensure that there's participation, but there's general lack of participation, which another great contribution to it is people have lost faith in the system, in these processes. But let's also have that honest conversation. You've heard my beautiful presentation. If you were told to vote between myself and your aunt to be councillor, who would you vote for? Exactly. That is corruption. That is nepotism. So that's an existing problem. And this is outside that your aunt has matric. Probably she makes the best salsa. But I'm sure I possibly could do better than her. So the issue of public participation becomes quite important if it is informed and we go back to the human interaction and human touch, which will help restore the public faith, and that is what we wish to work towards. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. The issue around leading the discussions around the requirements, it's a bit outside of the IEC mandate. Yeah, we can contribute to the discussion, but we can't lead it. It's a catch-22 issue, because the Constitution of the Republic allows citizens to freely participate, to choose leaders, or to be chosen as representatives. It doesn't place any requirements. So that's a national policy question that, as the Councillor says, something that needs to be, and I would even add to that, the whole question around the proliferation of political parties in terms of the value they add to democracy. As we sit here tonight, we have registered 674 political parties because the Constitution allows it. 674 political parties, 330 of those having a national footprint, still a lot. And then 32 provincial footprint, and 257 only present at district level. So that's another question to say, is the output matching the input in this regard? Now, to the next question, the calendar. This is also an interesting, but I think here I have to explain, Chair, with your indulgence.
You have 1 minute.
In that 1 minute, local government, as the colleague said, are about your services where you reside. So local government, you register where you reside and you vote where you registered. Therefore, you don't have an opportunity to worry about home. Your concern is here. If you intend to go home, you then should have, during that registration period, requested us to move you back to say, on the 4th, that's where you will be voting. If you didn't do that, then you will be voting here. So that's really just how the scheme works. But we have made sure that the timing of the polling day itself is meant to facilitate maximum participation, especially by the student population. Last point on voter apathy, just to touch on it as I give you this mic. We have recently concluded a study, a voter participation survey, and at the Electoral Commission, we hold a slightly different view. We don't believe there's voter apathy in South Africa. Because the study reveals that people are making a deliberate choice to not participate. And it goes to your point about substantive and liberal, not liberal, but procedural democracy. And I think you are being a bit unfair to the panel. We established that nexus very clearly, but we can take the discussion offline.
Thank you. Okay. We are about to open for a second round of questions. However, I need them to be as brief as possible because we're trying to maintain time. We have 10 minutes left of our program, and we want our questions answered. So I beg of you each, please keep it concise. Roaming mics? Oh, okay. Where's my first? There's my number 1.
Testing.
Number one, uyahlupha.
My name is Amila Mengu from Kwazilomzo High School. My question for today is, what are the few things citizens can hold local government accountable between elections?
Okay. Number 1. Number 2. Number 2. 2? 2. 2. We have a 2.
Thank you. Igama lami ngingu-Athule Koni. I come from KwaNobuhle, and I'm representing with my fellow colleagues KwaNobuhle Y Center. So basically, I have 2 questions directed to Usis Nobatembu, and one question that's directed to Dr. Shale, or either it may be Dr. Mtimka with regards to what I'm going to ask. So the first question is, why is insourcing not followed or made to be implemented all the time by government, particularly local government? Because the last time I remember, insourcing was done when in 26. Sorry?
Questions, please.
Sorry?
Questions.
I'm asking a question, but it's with regards to insourcing.
Insourcing. Why is it not
Yes.
happening?
Yes.
Okay.
So this point that I'm making now, by saying that because I remember back in 2016, during the time when Mr. Trollip was made mayor at the time, the insourcing was done with regards to security guards, the ones that were under Ufetility at the time, and then they were insourced into Unansik Maspalat. So that's my one question. And then the other question is that why is the state not procuring, or why is the state always procuring cheap products to strengthen our infrastructure when they know that we do have a dilapidating infrastructure? That's my other question. That's directed to Sis. Then my last question, it's more general, but in this sense,
It's
the
okay,
reason I
Suka,
was...
please.
Okay. Oh my. Go on. But I was directing it to Dr. Shale. Why is South Africa not being a one-party state and also fight to own our own resources and means of production so that we can advance in economics, agriculture, and technology? And goes.
Number 3.
Samunan ikamang katlego wangamaphanga isibongo. I'm a student here at NMU, second year LLB student.
Can you hold your mic different, please?
How?
You're not audible.
Singiyazwakala manje.
Yeah.
Yeah, my question is to you, Ma'am Councillor. What are the difficulties that you usually face as a councillor who's working under coalition government? And provided that to your answer, take into account that is one of the best mechanisms that we have to hold you as politicians accountable. Did I make my question clear?
Okay, is that all you have, number 3? Is that the full question?
It's the shortest.
Okay. We're going to open it up to them to answer. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to allow anyone else to ask a question. We have 5 minutes left. There are 4 of you. It's time to put your faith in a friend. Oh, Lotata. Ndimo wrong. Oh, I'm so sorry. Dr. Shale, do you want to begin, or is somebody else beginning? Oh, okay.
There we go. I'm going to try and subsume. The question that you were asking about giving people something to vote for and there being a bigger picture, and that brings in the private sector. Firstly, the private sector is part of society. It's part of the electorate. We are all going to have to build a society that works for everybody, but government's role is to get everybody to play their part. So if business is not doing what it's supposed to do, government is meant to regulate business appropriately to do that. And so I'm still voting for people who are going to do that work, who are going to do the regulation of business in a way that benefits society and benefits the mission of redistributive justice. So for me, I'm not going to bark at, I don't vote for companies. I vote for governments who are willing to hold companies to a regulatory standard that will be good for everybody. The second thing that I wanted to say, though, about your point is that I think that Dr. Shale is correct. We don't have an apathy problem. We have a choices problem. Our choices are poor, and people feel disenchanted by the choices. The study that he's talking about actually says that when South Africans are asked about institutions that they trust, only 11% of South Africans trust political parties. So we are asking people to go to the ballot to vote for people that they don't trust. That's why the quality of who's on the ballot matters more at this point. That's the only thing that's going to get people there, is good quality candidates. But the thing that I disagree on, Dr. Shale, is that we don't need to change the regulation. We need to change our expectations and what it is that we're willing to vote for. We don't need to change the criteria in law. We need to change the criteria in our political culture that we create to say these are the standards we're willing to vote for and these are the standards we are not willing to vote for. That's what needs to change. I don't think changing it in law is the thing that's going to help us most. I think we need to change our political culture, and the choices that we make will force the standards to be higher.
All right.
On the one-party state, the challenge is that political choices about designing a system are made by elites on the basis of the balance of power among themselves. So South Africa gave birth to a proportional representation system because those designing what nature of a system we were going to have after democracy were deadlocked. We negotiated. So if you negotiate, it's a bargaining process. So that's the thing. I don't want to debate the merits or demerits of one-partyism. But if it does help, we had 70 plus years, I think some say 75, of party dominance in the country. So we didn't have a legislated one-party state, but still we had the effect of a dominant party from the 40s until 2024. And the reason why today we have this multi-party system is because that dominant party system crumbled. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I'll try to answer the three questions in one. And the two things that you're raising around insourcing and infrastructure in the case of Nelson Mandela is a result of the challenges we have in a coalition government. One, insourcing, when it came into our municipality, it was a pronouncement done by the then mayor, the late Councillor Bobani, who came from a smaller party, who was forming part of our first interaction with the coalition government, and we had this thing called the Black Caucus. So he makes that, we will insource all of you. People clap hands. He goes to negotiate in a coalition that it must happen. It is adopted by council with no consideration of budgeting. You have a council resolution that is almost illegal because we can't implement it because we don't have money to insource it. We did the same in the university. We fought through Fees Must Fall, fought for insourcing. 10 years later, there was a successful insourcing. 10 years later, the institution says, no, we're going bankrupt, we can't afford this, we're reversing it. So small parties make these big, bold statements to get your vote. You give them your vote. We can't implement any of these things. Same applies with the infrastructure problem. Look, the infrastructure in our municipality is beep, because it's an infrastructure of over, I don't know how many decades. So it's important that we work towards sort of rebuilding the whole city. But what I promise you, even if national government were to say today, here's 500 billion, fix your infrastructure, you will have a coalition/syndicate stalling that process through negotiation as to who must get that tender in order that thing is fixed. So how do we fix that? It's two things, and Dr. Mdimga is disagreeing with me on this one, that vote for one party to lead so that we see, you know, so that you don't go into another coalition that gives you back another table. What do I negotiate? Or vote for parties that at least, you know, have given you a track record of some form of service delivery, that you trust that when these ones go into a coalition, they are able to maintain and sustain, you know, government properly. And this is also in relation with not just political parties, the administration, because it is administrators who whisper to politicians that, you know, if you can, it can, then we can. So sustainable governance can be achieved through stable political power, and that can only be achieved through your vote. You vote through participation. Thank you.
Dr. Shale? All right, this concludes our Q&A. Unfortunately, we are running a little over time. I would like to take this moment to thank each and every one of you, not only for participating and engaging, but actually honoring the invite to our event. This has been very eventful, and I understand I'm a villain walking out of this, and I would like to apologize. But unfortunately, this could be my job on the line. And I don't think you guys have the budget, clearly. So thank you so much for this. This means that you are willing to interact. This is true. Voter apathy is non-existent. I think engaging in things like this show that you are interested in the democratic process, and participating in democracy is an important thing. So thank you so much for honoring the invite. To our speakers, we at Kenred have gifts for each and every one of you. Dr. Shah, thank you so much.
When there's a public servant, I have to declare.
You must declare, yeah? I do the unboxing.
Unbox our gift from Kenred. Thank you so very much. We will be using one exit. You all have meal tickets. That is going to be helping you get refreshments. Thank you so much. This is the end of the program.